how it all started with you. How did badminton come into your lives?
I think 66 was the first time I was selected to go to the Commonwealth Games. I was playing in the second stage level competitions at that, mostly tournaments, initially for the first year, and I was playing in tournaments nearly every weekend in and around England.
So I really took a completely different route to K.
Yeah.
So I've always played sport. So I played tennis from the time I was about 7. I then got into hockey when I was 12. Very competitive, but in a small country town. And then I ended up getting married and having children. And I didn't really see badminton until I was about 31.
So I became a full-time professional badminton coach. The first one in Australia.
In today's episode, I have the great pleasure of chatting with two prominent members of the Australian badminton scene, Kay Terry and Dr. Judith Cousins. Kay Terry is Australia's most decorated badminton athlete ever, having represented the nation multiple times in the Commonwealth Games and was also the torchbearer for the Sydney 2000 Olympic Games and 2006 Commonwealth Games. Dr. Judith Cousins has been involved with badminton for over 40 years and was awarded the 2016 Oceania POWA trophy as well as the Women in Badminton Award from Badminton World Federation. We explore the world of badminton from various perspectives and learn what it takes to succeed at the highest levels of competitive sports. Without further ado, please enjoy this episode of The Way with Cheech featuring Kay Terry and Dr. Judith Cousins. Welcome, Kay. Welcome, Judith, to the show, The Way with Cheech. How are you guys going?
Really good, really good.
Yes, fine, thanks.
No, thank you so much. Well, first of all, thank you so much for coming out and making the time to come to the show, right? The team has been really excited. It's our first show where we have sports royalty, let's just say. So we're definitely going to dive into all aspects of badminton, right? So that's the main topic that we're going to be talking about today, and also find out a little bit more about your background story and how you guys got involved, and all aspects of running an association, right, with Badminton WA, and of course Kay as well. So understanding, I guess, how it is like to actually be a winning Commonwealth medalist. But I'm going to start really quite simple, broad, right, context. Badminton. Can both of you share with me how it all started with you? How did badminton come into your lives?
Well, it came into my life when I was a young teenager. My mother was a social badminton player in the Midland district.
Midland district?
Midland. And I was too young to belong to the club because it was an adult club. But I was very keen to get on the court for someone to give me a hit. So those days, back in before the 60s, the group used to have supper, tea and cakes at the end of the evening of their playing time. So that was the only time I could get someone not to have a cup of tea, but to come down onto the court and have a hit with me.
A bit of a hit with you. Okay.
So that's how I started.
Got it. So was it your mum that was the regular player in the family?
It was my mother, yes. My father was an engine driver,
yes,
the old-fashioned coal engine driver, and he was often away sometimes during the week. So it was my mother's interest.
Okay, right. Fantastic. And was it at a particular community centre in Midland?
It was at a recreation community centre, yes.
Yeah.
And one evening there was a visitor, an Asian boy from Singapore who was down here studying, and he saw me playing and he said to my mother, "Ooh, your daughter looks okay. Can she come to my badminton club?" So he belonged to the university club, of course, where he was studying.
Yes.
And that's where I followed him.
Yes. Okay. So talent spotted.
Yes, he was.
Okay. Right. So Midland, right? You started playing, and then you started to kind of join other clubs, right? So what, where did that take you? So for the next few years, yeah, correct.
Took me a long way.
Yes.
Gary Yang was my coach.
Yep.
I am still in touch with Gary now.
Okay.
And he lives in Singapore with his wife and family. First year that Gary and I made friends, the Australian Badminton Championships were being held in Perth. And I played in the junior event, which was an under 19 years of age competition.
Yep.
And I won that.
Fantastic.
In my first year of playing.
Wow.
So I then continued on. From then on, I think I made my first sort of senior team, which was the only state team in those days. We now have lots of junior teams, but in my time, we only had just the one team, and you could be any age to get into that. And I made my first team in 1960, my first state team.
Wow, that's great.
And probably continued to play through for at least 15 years.
15 years.
In that state Badminton WA team.
Badminton. What was the makeup of the team at that time? So when you joined, right, was it a big squad?
5 men and 5 ladies.
Okay. Yeah, pretty decent.
So we went to the interstate nearly every year to play in the competition.
Yes.
And in 1964, I won my first Australian Open ladies singles title.
Wow.
And continued in 64, 65, 60. For 5 years in a row, I won the Open Australian ladies singles title.
That is so impressive. Wow, that is so impressive.
Amongst that, I won the ladies doubles and mixed doubles. So totally I had 14 national titles over a period of probably 6 or 7 years. I still hold that title.
Yep, for the most
national titles won by any woman in Australia.
Well, there you go. You heard it, listeners. Record holder as we speak right now from many years ago. So, I mean, to kind of get to that level, right? Because, I mean, a lot of us, we play badminton just socially. And myself, I also grew up with badminton. My mom used to play in the locals tournament doubles on Christmas Island.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're actually from Christchurch Island. I've lived there half my life, right? And my mom we used to play a lot. And similar to your experience, right? She would never let me play with her group. She's like, too slow. Yeah. Too slow. Usually that's the word. Like, you're too slow. So it took me a while before I managed to get in, and eventually I did. But obviously, socially playing badminton is one thing. Competitively playing badminton is an entirely different thing.
Takes over your life. Took over my life.
Yeah.
Look, I was totally dedicated. I just loved the sport. Prior to me playing badminton, I was a very competitive tennis player, and I was in a junior state squad. I suppose I went from one racket sport to another. But look, I just loved the game. I had success within the first year of me playing, so I thought, wow, this is good. I should keep playing this. But it does take a lot of your time with training and you lose a lot of your friends because you can't go out to the parties and can't go dancing, you can't go to the movies because you've got to go to bed because you've got to go to training. So it's just became my life.
What was the routine like? Was it like wake up in the morning at 4:30 a.m.? Like, give us a bit of a taste into what the actual routine is on a day-to-day basis for.
Well, we did train as a team, back then, and all of us used to get together. The team was 5 men and 5 women, but there was always a couple of extra men and women that were just on the periphery of making the team. Yeah. So we were a group of probably about 20 people, and we used to go and run laps and laps and laps around the ovals and things like that, unlike what they do nowadays. Nowadays it's more refined in their training methods, but we used to do a lot of circuit training.
Yes.
Mostly in the afternoons. We were all working, so we all had to sort of go after work. So it was sort of 5 till 7 p.m. was the physical training time, and then we would get the court training time after that. But we were doing 3 or 4 nights a week.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you were actually still working full time, right? Whilst training, right, for the national competitions.
Yes. Part-time jobs, whatever I could get to actually fit in that suited my schedule of resting and getting to training on time. So training came first, work was second. But I needed to work because my parents were not flush, so they certainly supported me, but it was tough for them.
So you got to pay the bills, right? Got to pay the bills. Where was the training location back then for the squad?
There was a badminton stadium in the city.
Yep.
It's now become probably a car park.
Yeah.
It had about 7 courts.
Mm-hmm.
We did a lot of training there.
Oh,
but we
sizable.
Also,
yeah.
Sorry?
Sizable. 7 courts.
Yeah.
Back then, yeah.
We also used to go to, they didn't have recreation centres in my time, but we used the church halls and the school halls and things like that. So we didn't have the lovely sports centres like they have nowadays.
Yes. Yeah. Very, very, very good.
So later on, they had a nice stadium at Wembley that had 5, then 7 courts. It belonged to the Badminton Association of WA. So we, moved from venue to venue depending on the availability of the courts.
Very good. Oh, I'm sure things have definitely progressed a lot since then, and we'll definitely talk about that in a moment later. National titles. Where was it held in Australia? Right. How was that like?
Still the same now. They hold them in different states every year.
Rotation.
Yes, pretty much.
Yep.
My first title was in Adelaide in 1964, and then 65 was probably in maybe Newcastle. 66, probably Tasmania. Also, I think 66 was the first time I was selected to go to the Commonwealth Games.
Okay.
So that was an amazing time because they chose 2 ladies and 2 men.
Was that the first time that they sent anyone?
First time that badminton was included in the Commonwealth Games.
1966.
Yes. We went to Jamaica.
Got it. Wow. And how was that process like? So, is it very glamorous? Or is it do they send you out to somewhere, sit you down at a nice lunch dinner and say, oh, okay, you've been selected? How did that kind of come about? Yeah, the whole selection process.
Well, it was awesome to be actually named and chosen in the team because they only chose 2 women. The other lady was from South Australia, and the 2 guys in the team, one was from Tasmania, one was from New South Wales.
Yep.
That was an amazing event. We didn't win any titles that year. I was beaten by a lady from Singapore, a lady called Sylvia Ng, and
Sylvia Ng.
Sylvia Ng from Singapore.
Yes.
And I also played her in 1970 in Edinburgh in the quarterfinals, and she beat me again. This is the same lady.
Wow. You, Sylvia. You're living my life forever.
So it was awesome to actually walk out into the arena. I just felt so proud and just felt like a balloon floating around. It was just
in
amazing.
Jamaica for the first time in the Yeah. Before we get to the actual workings of the Commonwealth, right? How does it work within Australia? Like, is it like other sports whereby you have separate coaches, separate teams that manage the Commonwealth aspect of it?
You do. You do. The Australian Badminton Body choose the coaches and managers for the teams.
Yep. Okay. So at that time, did you have a coach? Before you were selected for the Commonwealth.
I think Gary was still coaching me then. He was here for only about 6 years. He was here for, and then of course he got his qualifications and he returned to Singapore. But I think he was still here with me then when I went to the 6 Commonwealth Games. Okay.
So you're at Jamaica at Commonwealth Games, right? Okay, playing for the first time. What was the format like? So was it a round robin or an elimination?
Knockout.
It was a knockout.
Yes, which is very unfair. Unlike it is now, you do get the chance to sort of play 3 or 4 other people in a pool.
Yeah.
But it was a knockout then because it was just first time they didn't know what to do or how to run these events then for badminton. So that was a shame from my point of view because I was the national title holder and yet I got knocked out I think I won 1 round and got into the 2nd round.
Okay, so for the first time, your first entry, right, you got into the 2nd round of the Commonwealth. Okay, all right. Well, hey, at least you were there, right? And then you had a great time, right? Okay, so subsequent to that, right, what happened next? So you had a few more showings?
continued playing in all the local competitions
Yes.
here in Western Australia.
Yep.
And then got chosen again to go to Edinburgh
Okay.
in 1970.
Yep.
So that's when I was defeated again by Sylvia from Singapore. And the coach that was allocated to us then was a Irish man from Birmingham, and he was one of the national coaches.
Yep.
And he was appointed to train the Australian team.
Yep.
And he found out that I was keen to stay in England. So he said to me, well, when we finish the competition, come down to Birmingham and I'll train you. So after the event had finished, I decided that I would go down to Birmingham. I was heading to go down to Wembley, where the All England tennis is held. Also, the badminton is held there, and that's where I thought I was going to go. But I ended up in Birmingham, and I stayed there for 4 years, training and playing in all the competitions. I went to Scotland and Wales and Germany and Holland. I went to all the
European circuits?
All the European circuit in that 4 years.
Okay.
At the same time, I got my coaching qualifications through my coach, Morris.
Coach Morris.
And then I came back to go to the Commonwealth Games in Christchurch.
Okay. Right. Now, before we go to Christchurch, this is why I like it. I love it. I love the journey. How was it like badminton in Europe versus Australia? Like, what's the vibe like?
Oh, it's a very high level.
Higher level?
Yes, very high.
Yeah.
And I was playing they had grades of tournaments. So the sort of A grade and sort of B grade, if you want to call it that way, or top level and the 2-stage level.
Yep.
I was playing in the 2nd stage level competitions at most of the tournaments.
Yep.
Initially for the first year, and I was playing in tournaments nearly every weekend in and around England.
That frequent?
That frequent.
That is amazing.
Yes.
Back then, that is amazing. Every week there's a tournament.
And it was costing me a lot because I was trying to work at the same time in weird jobs. Like I worked as a Kentucky Fried Chicken cook.
Oh!
I worked
KFC.
in a chemist shop as just the sales girl.
Yep.
I worked in a dress shop.
Yep.
Just to get some money to keep me running the petrol and going down to all these competitions.
Yeah. Yeah. So, wow. So it's in and out. So working throughout the weeks, and then maybe the tournaments are usually the weekends.
All weekends.
Only more weekends. Yeah. 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 You always remember those days? Those long days?
I do.
Yes.
Long driving in a little old Mini Minor car that I bought for about £100 or something.
What a deal. Go okay. Wow, that's great. So 4 years in Birmingham, then you came back, and then you had your next Commonwealth Games in Christchurch.
Yep.
Okay. What year was that? Just so the
1974.
1974.
So 66 Jamaica, 70 Edinburgh, 74 Christchurch.
74 Christchurch. Okay, so this is your 3rd appearance now at the Commonwealth Games. Okay.
Met the Duke of Edinburgh.
Oh.
In 1974, was asked to go to a morning tea. Because it was my 3rd Commonwealth Games selection.
Wait, royalty. So how was the Duke of Edinburgh?
I don't remember much about it, actually.
It was just very pleasant.
Yes.
Very good. Very good. And how did Christchurch go? That Commonwealth Games?
Still in the same format of playing. Probably only reached maybe the quarterfinals of the singles and doubles. Yep. So again, didn't medal at any of them, unfortunately. It was tough.
It's tough. Yeah. Tough crowd.
Tough.
But you did better than before. Yeah, yes. You actually made
made an improvement over the 12 years.
Yeah. No. I mean, to even be selected for the Commonwealth team is no easy feat. So
they did select 4 ladies and 4 men at that one.
How many?
4 and 4.
4 and 4. Okay, so it grew a little bit, the team.
I was still the number 1 player in the team. So
at that time? Okay, well, there you go. Do you actually hold the record for the longest number 1 as well in Australia?
Yes.
There you go, listeners. I want you to hear that one. So, well, that's great. So 66 to 74, 3 Commonwealth Games, right? What happened next after that?
I came home in 1974 from New Zealand, and I had an acquaintance friend who was in charge of phys ed at a university campus.
Yep.
And she offered me positions in teaching badminton to the students. So I became a full-time professional badminton coach, the first one in Australia. And when I decided to do that, I had to notify the Australian Badminton Association that I was going to do that. And they, at the time, didn't really know what to do with me because I couldn't continue to play badminton whilst I was earning money.
Oh, wait a minute. You have to explain that particular point. So what do you mean by that?
Well, once I started coaching at the university, that was a paid job.
Okay.
And those teachers that were doing that badminton course were phys ed teachers. So when they went out into their schools, they then employed me to go to their school to do the coaching with their students. So I was being paid for teaching badminton. So I was classed as a professional, and badminton was an amateur sport.
At that time?
At that time. So Badminton Australia didn't know what to do with me. What will we do with this girl? She's now earning money
from coaching.
From coaching.
Yeah.
So they labelled me a licensed badminton player.
Licensed.
Which meant I could not represent Australia whilst I was earning money.
That is actually quite fascinating, right? You would think it's actually the opposite. Like, I mean, obviously, professional sports associations exist everywhere, right? So that effectively stopped you from competing
for Australia.
Yep. And did they notify you? Did you have a bit of a discussion, or was it?
I had lots of discussion about it.
Yeah.
But I was the first one, so they really didn't know what to do.
Okay.
So that was their decision. And so I had to cease playing for Australia.
Is that what you wanted? Like at that time, did you still want to play for Australia?
I think I did. And I still could have been eligible because I was still playing in the local championships, including the state championships, which is the highlight of the tournaments for the year.
Yes.
And was winning that.
Yeah.
In singles and doubles.
Yeah.
So I was still sort of the best player, but unfortunately that was the ruling that they put on me, and I just accepted it and just thought, well, I'll just take this field now.
Yeah. Yeah. And then this field, I'm guessing what you've been doing for the past 50, many years.
50, 60 years.
50, 60 years. Oh, there you go.
74. How many does that make us? 50 years?
Can't tell, ladies. Can't tell. Did well. So and that kind of leads to your involvement with the badminton Western Australia.
Yes. A lot of coaching, well, all sorts. Community clubs, junior clubs. I started beginner courses everywhere. All sorts, from Pee-wee badminton, junior, little baby juniors, right up to state team players, ladies pennant team competitions. I did the whole lot for many, many years.
Many, many years. Well, I must say, I think Western Australia is very lucky to have someone like you, right, of such high caliber, right, actually staying and actually contributing back to the WA society. So, no, thank you so much for that. Yeah, appreciate it. Amazing career and journey, right? I really enjoyed kind of following through that journey. Now, for you, Judith, you also must have had your own kind of affinity with badminton.
Yes.
Please share a little bit. Yeah.
So I really took a completely different route to K.
Yeah.
So I've always played sport. I played tennis. I lived in the country and sport was big. So I played tennis from the time I was about 7. I then got into hockey when I was 12. Very competitive, but in a small country town. And then I ended up getting married and having children. And I didn't really see badminton until I was about 31.
So did you know of badminton?
No.
Okay, so all right. So how did you come across badminton? What was the very first time that you even heard of it, let alone started playing?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I had stopped working. I was home with a 1-year-old child, and my next door neighbour, who I was very friendly with, said, "You should come and play badminton on Tuesdays with me." And my answer was, "I have never seen badminton played. I doubt if I could play." And she said, "Well, you played tennis, so you'll have some hand-eye coordination." So I went along the next Tuesday, and one of the reasons I was pleased to go is they actually had a creche. So my daughter could go in the creche and I could play. And I actually found that I could play badminton. Not very well, but because I'd played a lot of tennis, I could connect. And I just loved it. So I started at 31 before I got on a court.
Spring chicken. Like badminton, like I don't know if you guys agree, but badminton is a sport whereby age is actually really not a number.
Exactly.
Doesn't matter.
I mean, I've played in games where I played against these, like, you know, uncles and aunties, as we call it, right? That are much wiser than we are. And I don't know why, but I keep finding myself like running, like from court to court, right? And they're just standing in the middle. I have no idea how they do it, right? And then they win the round in the end. So do you guys agree? Or
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We always now advertise the sport. You can anyone from 8 to 80. And
there you go.
as you know,
Yes.
I'm beyond that.
Yeah.
So you can just, it's a lifetime sport. And it's mainly because the racket is lovely and light.
Yep.
The shuttle is very light. And you can play at various levels and still enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah, fantastic. And in fact, like, you know, you guys actually do have some props here. You actually brought in some shuttlecocks and some badminton rackets, right? So yeah, would you like to share with the viewers here, right? Like, give a bit of a rundown as to what the racket is and the shuttlecock. But it is actually quite fascinating. Like the designs are very different to other racket sports. So yes,
Rackets come in various weights, and depending on the player, how they like to have a weighted racket that's in the head of the racket, or whether they like the weight of the racket in the handle, or even more evenly balanced.
Okay.
So the professional players all vary, because if you're a good, strong hitter, then you like the weight a bit heavier, so your smash can be more powerful.
Okay, so heavy on the head is much more on the smash.
Mostly.
Okay.
But generally for ladies, they need to use a slightly more evenly balanced racket, in my opinion, because they're not as strong as men and not as powerful. So very lightweight rackets.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. And also the actual string itself, right? Like what is that made of?
It's a synthetic string.
Okay.
The old days they used to use what they call the gut strings, which was the intestine of a sheep.
Ooh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Like, so wait, so just like any sheep, right? They what do? They dry the guts out?
Yeah.
And then, go ahead. Yeah, I'm so fascinated by the way.
Any racket sport, the tennis rackets all used to have gut strings in them. But of course, when you start to produce these things, you know, in enormous numbers, then it became far more economical to do a synthetic string. And of course, they come in various, Kay does a lot of stringing as well. So the string, people choose different strings depending on their game.
Like what?
Different thicknesses of the strings.
Okay. Yep.
So the gauge of the string can be a 60 or a 66 or through to 70, and that is the thickness of the string. So the top players would use a very, very fine string.
Yes.
And they would only probably use that string in their racket for maybe 1 or 2 matches, because it would lose the tension and they would restring the racket.
Every 2-3 rounds, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the same with the shuttlecocks. When they hit the shuttlecock,
yes,
these things cost about $2.50, $3 each. And top players in a match might go through 2 or 3 dozen shuttles.
a game.
A men's singles match.
Yeah.
So the slightest break of a feather
Discarded.
or folding of a shuttle,
Yep.
when it hits the floor, they discard the shuttle and take a new one.
Okay, we're definitely going to talk about shuttlecock for sure. Like for example, for the professionals, what number did they use? Is it a 60 gauge or for the professionals?
I would think they'd use possibly the 66 gauge.
Okay, right.
And the tension of the stringing also. The tension can be anything between 18 pound, which is very tight, through to 23, 24, 25 pound.
Yeah, which is more the average.
So, yes.
Okay. Just now we were talking about the racket construction, right? Obviously, materials have changed dramatically. Now, I remember when I was 15 years old, 14 years old, we still had a wooden badminton racket hanging around somewhere.
Correct.
And I did try that one.
Yes.
And I mean, let's just say it was a very different experience. Much more heavier, right? And much more thicker, right, around the handles and the construction. So how has materials construction changed over the years?
They went from full wood to steel shafts.
Yep.
To steel head and steel shafts, and then they went into carbon, and so technology has just changed.
Wow.
The rackets nowadays probably weigh 3 to 4 ounces.
85 grams. 3 ounces is...
That's correct.
85 grams.
Yep.
A badminton racket is 85 grams. Wow. Wow, that is light. Yeah.
Very light.
Yeah, that's very light.
That's probably the lightest of them.
Yep.
But then they do you can get them a bit heavier.
Okay. Yeah.
But that's the average weight.
The average weight. Okay. And then, right, we've reached this part actually that we haven't talked about, which is actually the handle, right? So obviously that grip is really important when it comes to, because the speed at which you have to handle the rackets and the way that you hit the forehands and the backhands, right? You have to kind of adjust your grip. How does that work with the grip? Is that always the same, or can you have different grips on that
You can have different thicknesses of grips.
Okay. Yeah.
Again, with most ladies, they like it a very small grip, where the men would probably like a bigger grip because their hand's bigger. And these things that are put on, some people use toweling grips.
Okay.
The old-fashioned toweling grips, but mostly these are the ones that are used these days. A form of rubber.
Synthetic.
Synthetic, yeah.
So these are much more common and prevalent now.
Yep.
Than opposed to the cloth towel ones.
Yeah.
No, that's great. Now, of course, we do have another piece of the badminton, very critical, of course, the shuttlecock, right? Now, I must say, like, this is very special because I don't know of any other racket sport at the professional level that still uses animal feathers. Is that correct? I'm just putting it out there because you look at tennis, you look at squash, right? None of them, they've all migrated to some form of synthetic kind of. But I do believe they still use animal feathers for professional badminton.
Yes, definitely.
Or is that incorrect?
No, I think you're right.
No, these are made from the left wing of a goose.
Ah.
Nearly all shuttlecocks are made in China. They have huge machinery and huge factories that produce them in China. But because they are a feather, of course, they're not very strong. So it can become a very expensive part of the game if you've got people who will they play one rally and then they'd like a new shuttle. So, of course, people look after them very carefully if you belong to a club, because you know that your next tube of shuttlecocks could be up to 36, 37 for 12 shuttlecocks. So they're forever saying people, use them carefully. Don't, when you're returning it to your partner on the other side or your opposition, throw it gently. We're looking after these expensive items.
Precious little gems.
Do not hit them along the floor like a tennis ball.
So
most definitely not.
Most schools don't use feather shuttles because they're just far too expensive. So there are quite good quality plastic shuttles that people can use. But, of course, it's not the real thing. Yeah. So if you're playing a proper game, you need your feather shuttle.
The feather shuttles. And
And there's 16 feathers.
I was just about to ask. I was just about to ask. So 16.
Glued into the base of this, which is cork.
Yes.
And inside there's a tiny little lead pellet, which is the weight of the shuttle.
Didn't know that. Okay, so there's actual lead pellet inside.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
lead pellet inside.
And that causes the shuttle to fly differently from a ball. So if you're hitting a tennis ball, it tends to arc, whereas in a shuttle, it's more likely to fly, reach its height, and then drop more vertically down, straighter down. So you get it's a different shot you're going to play because of that.
Yeah. And I mean, like, you know, due to its design, right? Like, you know, shuttlecocks can actually go very fast, right? Faster than many other racket sports.
It's called the fastest racket sport in the world
Well,
the reason that the shuttlecock goes much, much faster than a tennis ball or a squash ball.
Very fast. Have to have those sharp eyes to watch out for that. I've also heard that weather or temperature conditions change the game quite a lot when it comes to the shuttlecocks. Is that right? Yeah?
Correct. And they use different speeds of shuttles as well in that case. So in the summer, they use a different speed to what they would use in the winter.
Okay. All right. How does that vary? Like, how do they vary or moderate the shuttlecocks according to speed? Like, is it like thicker feathers for certain temperature or just curious?
They must weight them differently because all brands of shuttles are numbered differently. Some are numbered 78, 79s and 80s.
Okay.
And so they must vary the weight inside the cork to make that difference of the speed.
But they don't change the actual feather.
No.
Okay, so the feathers are the same. It's not as if there's different kind of
No.
yeah, okay, feathers for different conditions. Okay. Now, talking about maintaining the shuttlecocks, there is a way whereby I think some person said that they kind of preheat or pre-warm or pre-steam the shuttle or something
Pre-steam
like
them,
that?
yes.
Yes.
Because they're all glued together,
Yes.
the glue gets very brittle and the shuttle and the feathers will come away from, you know, this string part here around the edges.
Yeah.
So they're best kept in fridges.
Really?
Or take the top and the bottom off the actual container of the shuttle
Yep.
and let some steam go through.
Yeah. Okay.
Or
So like actually pump steam through it.
Yeah, or slowly dip the whole feather into tepid water and then just pull it out and let it dry. So that puts the moisture back into the glue part so it doesn't break the feathers so easily.
Got it. Well, tomorrow I think the good guys in Harvey Norman, they're gonna have a large order of fridges coming out from certain sections of the Perth community. No, that's actually very very interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that one. I learned so much from that one. So moving on, right, and I can see definitely that you guys both sporting the Badminton WA. Beautiful shirt, by the way. I love it. Tell me more about Badminton WA. So tell me more about the association, how it's come about, and all the great work that you guys do these days to help continue to grow this sport, which I think is just so underrated, by the way. But I want to hear what you guys think.
Well, this is quite a special year for badminton in WA because it's the 100th anniversary of the establishment of Badminton WA.
Huge. Congratulations.
So it started small and it was really just a club for men to start with, and then they were allowing some women to actually appear. It was really, as all of the sporting associations did, you just have a handful of people who are very keen on the sport. They get together and then they start to organise, and eventually, of course, it grows and they start to bring in some rules. So you end up, with a constitution and bylaws, and really it's always been run by volunteers. So we started with not even a board of management, just an executive, a president, secretary and treasurer, and every club that was affiliated would send a delegate to the meetings. And that was how I first became involved, because I was sent as the delegate of my club. And I didn't really know what was going on for a couple of years, but then I sort of thought, Oh yes, I'm getting the picture of what work is actually done in an association. So I first was then asked, when I'd only been playing for a couple of years, if I would come on to be the registrar for the association. These days, of course, everything's on the computer, slightly easier, but we had 3,000 members and I had everybody's name on a little white card in a filing box. So everything was done manually.
Back then, that's how it was.
That's how it was. So
absolutely.
I actually knew a lot of people because I was ever flicking through these little cards to see if they were eligible for the event that we were organising. So my involvement sort of grew from there, but I did get a good background in how that association was actually running. So I didn't go back on the board, or I wasn't on the board for some years, because I actually had a career outside the sport happening, but I was still playing just socially.
Yes.
So eventually, in the late 80s, somebody said to me, I think, you might be interested in going on the Badminton WA Board of Management. And I'm I like to think I'm a very organised person and I like things to be done well. And I thought,
you are.
I think I will go and get involved, which I did and really enjoyed it. So I wasn't on the board until the late 80s. From that, I then went on to be on the Badminton Australia Board of Management and the Australian Commonwealth Games Board, none of which was actually planned. But I was able to sort of be part of the growth of the actual association, which went from quite an amateur body to a much more professional association with an elected board. And then now we've actually have staff, not enough staff, unfortunately. But it's only in the last 20 years that we actually employed anyone to actually be paid to work for the association.
So like a management team?
Well, we had one person,
yes,
an executive officer. Then we managed to get an administration officer, but part-time. And now we actually have an executive officer, a part-time administration officer and a part-time support or development officer. So still a tiny little staff for a state association, which means that a lot of the operational tasks are done by the Board of Management, which would like to be more strategic and talk about visions and missions, but in actual fact find where they're picking up shuttles and moving chairs and doing.
We all do that sometimes. Like when we play badminton, you can't escape it. Yes.
Yes. So we run that as professionally as is possible.
Yeah.
When it's still seen as a minor sport and is funded accordingly.
Yeah, understand. I must say, I think you are being quite modest because I think Badminton WA actually contributes a lot, right? And there's a lot of different events that gets organized right at many different levels. Can you share a little bit about like the various events that you guys do?
Well, we do have a tournament program annually, and in that we run open events, which is meant we have juniors in them, children as young as 8 and 9, right through to the seniors who. We run about seven of those each year. We also run junior tournaments. We also run school tournaments, and we do some special events. So this year we've actually run 3 quite special events. We had the Oceania Badminton Para Championships. So this is our para badminton group, and followed immediately by the Western Australian Para International. This was held down in Mandurah. We had players from 120 countries.
That's amazing.
Arrive.
That's amazing.
So we had wheelchair players, short-statured players. Actually, it was a tremendous event. We hope to put para on the map a bit in Australia.
And is it a new occurrence of the para badminton? Like, what's the history of that versus?
Well, it's very short history, really. the para badminton was in the Olympics for the first time in the last Olympics. So this year will only be the second Olympics that has had badminton as a sport.
So in Paris. Yeah.
In Paris, yes. So the other event that was quite an interesting one that we ran this year was the World Transplant Games.
You got to tell me what that is. That sounds very interesting.
We were asked to include, this was a multi-sport event, but we were asked to have badminton in it. And these were all people who've undergone kidney transplants, heart transplants.
Got it.
Liver.
They were the most amazing people, possibly because I think they realised they were having a second chance at life. And they were so happy. They were very competitive, but you could just see how much they were enjoying life.
Yeah, but at being able to even
to be there competing,
playing physically, right, after what they've been through.
Fantastic.
And at a very, very high level.
Yes.
Oh, very high level.
Very high level.
Great. Yeah.
Both the men and the women.
Yep.
And was that in Perth or also in
No, in Perth.
That was in Perth. Okay. Right.
So we were very happy with both of those events, but it took a lot of work and it was done by the volunteers. So we didn't pay anybody to do anything. But they were all very, very well run events and very successful. And as our transplant games gentleman stood up at the end and said, "This is the best badminton event I've ever been to."
There you go. What else do you want as an endorsement, right?
So we're very active, very active.
So I think with the transplant games, that's every second year, third year? It's a bit like the Masters Games and games events now. They're every second or third year.
Okay.
And the transplant games the same.
Okay.
It just happened to be here in Perth this last year.
Was it? Is it like a rotation, like within different cities in Australia, or is it
no
around the world? Okay.
I must admit we had not heard of it until we were contacted, and they said we're coming to Perth and we'd like badminton to happen.
So there's many games out there, like so they're just pick and choose which games they want to include. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So we're very active, and there's badminton happening all over WA. The country towns often have small badminton clubs, and they play in. Community centres are in nearly every significant town.
The grassroots.
Yes. So those are run again by volunteers. People come along, they just form a group, they run social nights.
Very good. Yeah, very good. And also, obviously, you have a lot of members that become Badminton WA, right? And is it pretty straightforward to become a member of? It's
very easy to become a member. Really, we have we're just launching a new digital platform that will make joining even easier than it has been in the past. So we certainly will be doing a lot of promotion about that in the next 6 weeks, because we're supposedly changing to that at the end of March.
Okay, that's great signs. Definitely a bit of a progression. I mean, I will quickly say now, I actually do watch the Badminton Super Series, and I definitely watch Badminton Olympics. If you want, a greater attendance in Badminton WA, and this is from a fan, personally speaking, right? Can you just bring Lee Chong Wei to Perth? Please, can you just, I don't know, doesn't matter how you do it, right? Can you just bring him in, right? For those who don't know, Lee Chong Wei is a very famous shuttler from Malaysia, right? So Lee Chong Wei, Victor Axelsen.
Yes, he would be good.
Peter Gade, right? So he's been up there for a very long time, has his own academy, etc. I think that's a lot of what the fans want, I feel. Getting these big names, right, to come across. I know it's not easy. I know. No pressure.
We have
pressure.
We have some big names here.
Yes.
Please do share. Tell us who the big names.
Well, because Perth is actually, well situated as regard Asia, and badminton is huge across all of Asia, we have had very famous people come to Perth. So at one stage, the number one men's singles player was Yang from China. Now, Yang came with his wife, Yuli. They moved to Perth with their family about 20 years ago, I would think
Oh,
now.
right.
And immediately had an impact on the badminton scene. And about a little earlier, but not a very different time, we had Ailing and her husband, who was also Chinese champions, and they were world figures on the badminton stage. They made their homes in Perth. Now, both of those women decided that they would coach in Perth. They set up strong coaching, they didn't call them academies, but groups. And Yuli is still here, and she's still running a very big badminton academy. So we have attracted some people to live in Perth. We would like to be able to attract some more players to come down. Even we've thought of bringing them down for exhibition matches.
I was just about to say that word, exhibitions. Yeah.
Yes. So we haven't done that for a while. I think the time might be ripe.
Oh, well, you all heard it here first, right, listeners? Okay. Don't even remember, who mentioned it here first and where? It was at this podcast. So I mean, maybe to those who maybe are aspiring, to become regular players of badminton, right? And then also wanting to become professional, right? Are there any kind of maybe words of advice, tips and tricks, right? Just to share with the audience, because I'm sure there'll be a lot of fans that are listening, right? So
there are clubs in every community, and most of them welcome new players. A lot of them are played during the day. There are ladies and men's, shall I say, seniors groups.
Yep.
Now, seniors is anything from over 40 up to 80. So there's a lot of those, and they are everywhere. They also have clubs in the evening in all communities. So I think they're pretty much all welcoming new players. So get along and join.
Well, on that note, right, how best can they find out more about Badminton WA? How can they get in touch, with
we do have a presence in the sense that we've got a website, and we're updating it to be a bit more user friendly at the moment. So that's going to definitely be improved. But we've had a website for many years. We also have Facebook, and regular little snippets go on Facebook, and we have quite a following on that. I think we're also on Instagram, and our executive officer is very keen on social media, and so he's making sure that things do get promoted.
Yep, fantastic. And the website URL, the address, do you know what the
badmintonwa.org.
.org?
.org, yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay, and we'll put that in the show notes as well, so that those listeners and viewers can actually go and visit that. Well, I mean, I think we've covered a whole range of topics already. You guys have been more than gracious with your time. So thank you so much, Kay. Thank you so much, Judith. Right, it's been a pleasure, and thank you so much for coming on to the podcast. And all you listeners, I will see you at the next episode.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.